All right, guys. Today we have an interview. I'm going to keep this really, really short. So, unfortunately, my computer was having issues, which I talk about in the beginning of the episode. I explained this at the beginning of the interview anyway, but I just want to kind of re-explain it right now as I'm recording the intro. But basically, I was having issues with my computer, so I was unable to record on the computer. So, the interview you're about to hear is done entirely on phone. It's my phone recording our phone conversation. So it's still going to sound pretty good. I mean, it's not going to be unintelligible or anything like that. Ironic that I messed that word up. But it's not going to be unintelligible, but it is going to sound much, much different than the normal episode. So please enjoy. Again, sorry about the sound quality or what have you. I want to give a shout out to our new, again, I keep saying they're our newest sponsor, but they're not really sponsoring the podcast yet, but they just sent me a bunch of stuff today. I'm recording a bunch of episodes on Monday the 13th. This won't be out Monday the 13th, but I'm recording a bunch of episodes on Monday the 13th, and they just sent me a package today. It's Zencore Clothing. They're a new kind of an up-and-coming clothing company. I don't even know if they've even done like a full rollout yet. Like they don't have a website yet or anything. But anyway, they sent me a bunch of samples today, and they are incredible products. I like their logo. I like everything. So I'm wishing them the best, and hopefully we can work something out for the future and they can become a full-time sponsor of the podcast. But of course, our trusted sponsors, the MMA Takeover. Please go back and listen to this week's news episode with the MMA Takeover. That's the MMATakeover.com. Of course, the Herman Acre Soap Company. Go to getsmelly.com, enter code loudmouth10 to get 10% off your entire order. And the Voball, thevoball.com. I'm just kind of blowing through these just because, I have a lot of episodes this week, so that my sponsors are going to get their love, so no worries to them. But thevoball.com, please go to Voball, VOBALL.com to learn more about their fantastic product. It's a boxing, it's for boxing training, kickboxing training. It works on hand-eye coordination, focus. Comes with 2 size balls, one small, one larger, depending on, what kind of thing you're trying to train for, whether it's precision or if you're using knees and stuff. It's obviously hard to hit a really small ball. But anyway, it's a great product. I don't want to ramble too long here, so please go check them out, thevoball.com. All right, guys, enjoy this week's interview with Gerald Meerschaert. He was a fantastic interview. He fights Ryan James in Canada here in a couple weeks, so I hope you guys enjoy.
Hey guys, this is Gerald Meerschaert, and you're listening to the Loudmouth MMA podcast.
You've got a gun, you've got a big gun, you've got a gun, it's not a real one, and all you ever think about is running away, all you ever think about is trying to stay away from me.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Loudmouth MMA podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Steele. Today, we are interviewing Gerald Meerschaert, who was kind enough to take out the time to talk to me today. Gerald, how's it going, man?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, guys. If the sound quality is a little different here, it's because I'm doing this on a phone. I'm glad I have this software because my computer's not cooperating with me, so of course I can't use a microphone. But I think it'll sound all right. So, but if it does sound a little different, that's why. We'll go back to normal sounding stuff in the future. Hopefully, unless I need a new computer or something. All right, Gerald. So you fight Ryan James. This is something that it seemingly got set up. Didn't get set up as far out as I feel like normal fights do. How far out did this one get set up?
For me, it wasn't short notice. I can't remember exactly, but it was definitely more than 4 or 5 weeks out. So it got set up, probably about the same amount of time any other, fights would get set up for guys in our position where we're still new. It's not like they're booking fights for brand new guys months in advance, but it was normal time frame. Just on this card and on some of the FS1 and Fight Pass cards, they don't release the lineup as quickly because it's more of a. Honestly, it's more of a filler card in between the bigger fights.
I gotcha. Now, I will say, for full disclosure, I've had Brian James on the podcast, and he was one of my favorite people. So it is funny because I really loved your debut, of course. I think most people did. That's a huge win, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And this was definitely a mess because I had kind of reached out to you before this fight was ever announced. Like, I had reached out to you, I think, like a month or so before it was even announced, kind of right after your debut there. But so I've had Ryan James on in the last couple weeks, and when this one got announced, I kind of, like, my heart sank a little bit. I was like, right, like two guys that you really like, you know, one of them picking the other one off. So that was just personally, that was one of those things. It's because it's the first time that's actually happened. Right, two guys I've had on who are now going up against each other. So that's going to be an interesting little dynamic there. Again, not like it matters in the actual world, but, you know, just for my little thing. But very cool. So have you had a chance to meet him yet?
Have I what?
Have you had a chance to meet him yet or anything? Do you guys do any, like, kind of any stuff that leads up to the event?
No, not yet. I had seen him at my first fight. You know, both of our fights were on the same card. Yeah. And I don't think, you know, I think I talked to maybe some guys on his team. I might have talked to him for a second, but, you know, nothing that I really remember, more in passing kind of thing. So, I mean, I'm sure we'll see each other at the event, but, you know, I've done a couple interviews now with guys that have also interviewed James, and, you know, everyone tells me he's a super nice guy, and, you know, I'm like, well, I'm not surprised he's Canadian. They're all really nice. Right? I mean, so, you know,
there's something in the water over there.
Exactly. You know, he seems like a nice guy, so I'm definitely not, like, angry coming into this fight or anything. It's just, you know, another fight, and I'm excited to get in there and do my thing.
Oh, yeah. You guys have a job to do, and at the end of the day, I mean, there is an interesting dynamic there. I always wonder for fighters, you know, if you're going up against someone who is like a nice guy, is that something that you are going to struggle with? Or conversely, if it's a guy that you're hating, is that going to have a bad effect? Like a guy like Dustin Poirier comes to mind, where one of the knocks against him was that he would lose fights where he was coming in super angry, right? If he was coming in normal, kind of like he was in Jim Miller, he has a much better performance, right? So that's kind of a knock against him. And then other guys, they feed off of hating the other person, right? And that makes them better. Do you find yourself in one of those two camps, or is that something you've even thought of?
I think that's more of, you know, like a fighter-to-fighter personality type thing, because...
Oh, for sure.
You know, even on my team, there's some guys where, you know, either way they'll have a good performance, but some guys, if you try to pick on them a little bit, you know, that those inner demons come out and it kind of makes them fight harder. And some guys, if you get them mad, you know, they could start swinging wild and they kind of abandon their technique and they need to stay focused. For me personally, I haven't noticed a difference. You know, I've talked shit about a lot of guys, and then right. I've talked shit about them beforehand, and we've even gone back and forth on the internet and stuff, and then I'll see them in person. You know, we have a nice conversation. You know, it is what it is. Like, if I'm going to do what I can to hype up the fight, you know, if I feel that it's going to help. You know, in this instance, Ryan's a nice guy. You know, we're the first fight of the night. It's not like we're fighting for a title or contendership or anything. There's not much of a need for me to be that guy right now. So, you know, I'm just playing it cool, and I've been fighting with guys before. It hasn't stopped me from punching them in the face. So for me, it's not too much of a problem.
Absolutely. And what are you expecting from this fight in particular? I'm not asking for a prediction. I usually don't ask for predictions just because I'm not one of those people. But just kind of what are your expectations of this fight? Like, how do you think it's going to go?
I mean, he said before, you know, he's known for his chin and his cardio, and I think both of those are mostly true. Like, his cardio is obviously good. He comes out and, you know, he moves around a lot. He has a pretty decently high punch count especially for MMA fighter. You know, if he's coming in to throw something. And, you know, when I hear guys say, and he's said this multiple times and said that people tell him that he's got a good chin, it just tells me you have bad defense. So, you know, he does a lot of the same things over and over, has a lot of habits that will leave him open to me get my hands on him. And, you know, I don't think he's really fought someone yet that has, maybe he fought some guys with good punching power, but I don't think he's fought anybody that has good enough striking in MMA to really take advantage of it, or maybe they had a good enough striking base, but then couldn't follow it up because it was a straight MMA fight, not boxing or kickboxing. So, I think I'm going to be able to put my hands on him and put him down.
I also imagine that he also hasn't fought a guy with your submission prowess. I mean, I'm not looking, I don't have your, again, because I'm not using my computer, I don't have your record up right in front of me, but I was obviously looking over it, and many of your wins are, of course, by submission. So I would definitely say he hasn't gone up against a guy with that kind of, with that, amount of submission, certainly. And is that something, are you imagining you're going to be able to find a window for that?
It's always a possibility, honestly. And I spoke to Aljamain Sterling before my last fight about this. We were just on the mat in the room relaxing, and I told him, I love grappling because he's a fellow grappler too, and I've got 18 submission wins. And I said, honestly, a lot of the time it's not me pressing for a takedown to find the submission. I just hit guys and they get hurt, and then they bum rush me. And because I'm comfortable everywhere and I have enough tools, I take whatever's easiest. So they bum rush me, I can't get a strike off, I hit a quick takedown like I did in my last fight. And, they're already busted up. It makes the submission that much easier. So, is it a possibility? For sure. I've done it 18 other times to 18 other people. I finished a fight by submission, and, generally it's in the earlier, first or second round. But on the same hand, just the way he's built, as tall and as lanky as he is and the way he fights, I doubt he's going to shoot on me. And if he did, it's not really going to go anywhere. Not a knock on him necessarily, but his wrestling just isn't there, and I've never really seen him use it either. So, anyone could do anything, and I could definitely be in a position for a submission, but it'd be one of those instances where I'd have to press for the takedown, and I'm just not sure that that's where the fight will go this time.
Yeah, for sure. And all that makes complete sense. And, I know you mentioned, of course, this fight isn't for contention or anything like that. You both are coming into your second fight. But this is still a really good fight. I really like this fight on paper. It's two guys that I think are extremely tough. I'm talking about you as if you're not talking to me, but just being objective, it's two guys who are extremely tough. So in my mind, I'm imagining this goes to the distance. I'm imagining both of you guys are going to be able to withstand, and it's going to be a great fight.
Oh, for sure. I like the matchup myself, not just because and obviously I'm going to think every fight's a fight I can win, but not just because of that, but because, like you said, his style and my style together, it'll make for an exciting fight. Neither of us are really looking to just lay on somebody. We both push the action and, look for our shots. So I think that's definitely something that's going to appeal to the fans. And, to that point, it's another reason I don't really, other than not being a contender fight or a title fight, I don't really need to be that guy and talk a lot of shit because, right now in this stage of my UFC career, all I got to do is go out there and win and build my highlight reel and just talk with my fist, basically. I go out there and perform, that'll be more than enough noise.
100%. Could not agree more. Now, I will say, as far as talking shit is concerned, it's hard not to talk to a guy from Duke Rufus without at least bringing up the one and the only Tyron Woodley. Right? Yeah. I'm sure in most of your conversations he gets worked in a little bit. And here's the thing, and this is why. One, obviously he's a big name. But two, it legitimizes your game as well, right? Because you are surrounded by greatness. And greatness breeds greatness. That's just how that works. And you are with some killers over there at Duke Rufus. So that's definitely a gym. I wouldn't say it's underrated. I don't know if that's the way to put it, but it's definitely a gym that I don't hear as many people talking about as Jackson Wink, right? And as even Team Alpha Male, which isn't even, I think, close to any of the other camps. But you hear about that camp so much more. It's a fantastic gym. Do you have any type of, anything you want to say about the Woodley-Thompson fight upcoming? Obviously it's a fight we've seen before. It's a fight that, I'm talking to Wonder Boy in a couple of days, so I'm not trying to talk shit, but he probably didn't win that first fight in reality. Yeah. So Although he is a guy that if there's anybody who I think would be able to come back better, I do think he's a guy that could do that. I mean, I definitely wouldn't be sleeping on him. But yeah, I mean, I would say that he probably didn't win that first fight. You know, if anything, it was, yeah, I don't know. So yeah, well, that's tough. But yeah, anything that you'd like to add? I'm sure you feel the same way as I do.
Yeah, well, to your first point, you know, Rufus Ford is obviously a great gym, and I definitely understand what you're saying. It's not, you know, we might not get as much hype or as much shine as some of these other gyms because, you know, we're kind of a tight-knit family compared to most of the other quote-unquote super gyms. Like you mentioned, Jackson Wink, you know, a lot of people travel there to train there. It's not like there's a tight-knit community of fighters. Like, of course, they have their few big profile fighters that, you know, are quote-unquote out of that camp. But, you know, it's not as small of a family. And, you know, Alpha Male, obviously, they've been around for a long, long time. And, you know, they've just had a lot of guys in the limelight. So, and they've, you know, always done well for themselves. And, you know, there's other gyms like AKA's got a lot of high-profile UFC guys. And really it's more, I think it's more like who's in the top right now. Like before we had Anthony winning the belt and all that good stuff. And, you know, now we got Tyron winning the belt. It just depends on how many guys you have in the UFC. And now we're gaining steam again. You know, I'm in the UFC. Bilal Muhammad, who's with us, just won his fight, you know, a couple days ago. Tyron Woodley, as you said, again, fighting for another strap. But, you know, I think we're from a, well, not small, but smaller Midwest city compared to a lot of these other big cities. And, you know, we keep a tight-knit group. And even the guys you haven't heard about, you know, the way we train and our technique is just at such a level where, you know, we don't need a lot of high-profile names. Like, we got a couple guys, but, you know, a lot of our stuff in our team is very, very small, and we like it that way. And then as far as the Woodley-Thompson fight is concerned, I definitely think Tyron will, you know, take the steps necessary, and I've seen him taking the steps necessary to make sure he finishes this fight, not just wins it. You know, like you said, Wonder Boy is no one to sleep on, but I think the ways that in which Wonder Boy can improve, I think he can be a better version of what he already is. I think it's going to be very hard for him to learn to fight in different ways and with different skill sets. And, you know, it's not knocking him. That's part of his allure, and part of what makes him is, you know, he has that sport karate style. And obviously it's worked for him up to this point, but he's fighting a guy with, you know, heavy hands, fast hands, someone who, as we saw in the last fight, clearly doesn't have a problem with cardio. Somebody who's got 20 years of wrestling experience, wrestled at, you know, pretty much the highest level in folk style wrestling. So in order for him to come back and, you know, be different than he was last time would be really hard. Like, obviously you're going to do better once you already fought against the guy, but the difference there is Tyron has progressed. You know, he's always been good at wrestling. He's always been good at ground and pound. You know, he's always getting better with his submissions. His hands are, you know, he's always had knockout power, but you can see, you know, look at his first fight in the UFC, he knocked out Jay Huron with that little blitz punch, one of the fastest knockouts in the UFC. And then he comes back and fights for a title. You know, he throws maybe, 3 or 4 punches the whole fight, and just from working with Duke and everybody at Rufus Fort, sets it up, gets a basically clean one-punch knockout and follows it up on the ground, you know, against arguably one of, if not the toughest UFC champ that's been in a long, long time.
Yeah, and I will say that I definitely believe that a guy like, my daughter's talking in the background, I would say that a guy like Tyron Woodley, though, as much as it sucks, I think, obviously, to have a draw, I mean, you could see it on his face, obviously, although some of that was confusion. But you could see it on his face, and you've heard him talk after, and, you know, not a fan, right, as a lot of people weren't. But I will say, there's one thing to take away from it. It's that this kind of thing makes you better. And a guy who's already so good, maybe this is a push it takes to really, truly hit your peak. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's the one thing to take away from it. I mean, I hate to bring up McGregor, but I think it's true for a guy like McGregor. I think losing to Diaz was the greatest thing that ever happened to him. that he needed something like that, I think, in order to continue to progress. Now, we'll see. He hasn't really proven anything since that loss, at least not to me. But, we'll see. But I think a guy like Woodley, having something like this happen, and I kind of heard it a little bit. This isn't what you said, but it's kind of how I interpreted it. I think he's going to come back bigger and better, right? And that's what this was the catalyst for that. So that's one I absolutely can't wait for.
Oh, for sure.
That was such a good first fight. Absolutely incredible. And here's what's sad is probably the only reason why it wasn't like a top-tier contender for fight of the year, I think, is because it didn't a draw. And I think it just got pushed down the list of fights of the year for no reason. But it just seemed like that's what happened.
Yeah, and really that just kind of speaks to the level that these guys are fighting at where, they go back and forth and, Tyron all but finishes him in the fourth round, basically knocks him out, drops him a couple times, almost pops his head off with a choke. And then, Wonder Boy somehow survives that and, is able to stand on his feet without just keeling over and last through the fifth round. That's, that's the whole point of, having top fights is it should be almost a draw or a back and forth. In my opinion, I would think that was probably one of the best fights.
Agreed. And part of it got also just overshadowed because UFC 206 was so close to that. And, of course, you had that Duo Choi Cup Swanson fight. So I think that's part of it, too. Because the fight was so good, but then it got overshadowed a little bit,
right.
Because it was such an incredible, iconic fight, a month and a half later or something.
Right.
But either way, that fight will live in infamy for sure. We'll be talking about that fight in 10 years, I have no doubt. Also, you mentioned Bilal Muhammad. I had no clue Bilal trained there. I don't know why I didn't know that, but I didn't for some reason.
Yeah, he's originally from Chicago, but he's been training with us for probably 2 or 3 years now. He started, coming up part-time, and now he's made the move, has an apartment up in Milwaukee and going with us full-time. He'll go back to Chicago on the weekends and stuff and see his family and everything. But
yeah, I probably knew that, and it just didn't click. But that was an incredible fight. We could talk about that for 2 seconds there. Incredible fight against Randy Brown. And not only was it entertaining to watch, but that's a name. That's a name. Maybe people don't think too highly of Randy Brown, but at the end of the day, he had a name attached to it. And that's
for sure.
That's a big deal to get a win like that. So congratulations, Bilal Muhammad, man.
Yeah, and it was 8 days notice against, like you said, his name. And Randy Brown is a tough guy, and he went out there and truly in the Ruthless Sports style, he chopped him down like a tree with those leg kicks, and he looked great on short notice.
We did a live fight companion, and we were just calling this card the UFC leg kick. It just seemed like every single fight there's so many leg kicks. Brett, we didn't start the fight companion until kind of the end of the first round of that fight, because that was the last fight on the prelims. So we do a live fight companion for the main card. So yeah, from there on, it was just leg kick city. And it was really, you saw that in I think even in the kind of snoozer of the main event there was also a lot of leg kicks. But yeah, that Randy Brown Bilal Muhammad fight was a very, very good fight.
Yeah,
and he did a fantastic job. Yeah, on very, very short notice. Well, all right. So one last question I want to ask you here. Obviously you have this fight ahead of you, so let's not think too much past that. But kind of what is your where are you seeing yourself in the next 2-3 years? How are you imagining this? When you picture in your head where you're going to be.
In 3 years for sure, I want to be at least in the top 10, if not knocking on a title shot. If I stay as healthy as I've been and I get the amount of fights that I want to get in, I took my first fight on short notice. I got a quick turnaround right away. If I keep going through guys like this, I'd love to fight at least 4 times a year, if I stay this healthy. And then, by that time, I would like to be, like I said, I'd be very, very surprised if I wasn't top 10 in the next 2 years. In the next 3 years, for sure, I'd love to be knocking at the door for a title shot.
See, and this is why I asked this question, because I really like that answer, because it's not the answer that everyone gives. Like, it's funny when you talk to people, the answer they give all the time, not all the time, but a lot of times the answer is, oh, well, I'm going to have the belt. It's like, yeah, but in 3 years, you're probably not, though. I mean, because you have to build to that. Like, you don't just, like, unless you're kind of luck yourself into a position, you know, you're not going to get a shot that quickly. So I like your, like, that's why I think you will be successful at that, because you can see and visualize the path there, right?
Right.
You're not fighting for the title limit here, right? You're just not. Like, that's not going to happen. You know, I mean,
right, yeah.
it could, but.
Yeah, if I get the shot, you know, you bet your ass I'm going to take it. But
of course, yeah.
Like you said, realistically, I'm going to have, you know, I'll hopefully get 2 more fights this year probably, and then maybe keep going into the next year. And, you know, let's say 2 years, if I'm fighting 4 times a year, that means I should have 10 more fights by then, including the rest of this year. And, you know, depending on how fast they want to bump me up and, like, how the landscape in the middleweight division is looking, you know, there's still probably 5 guys right now that deserve a title shot today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they all got to fight first, and a lot of them, like Damian Maia, real smart on his part. He's just waiting. He's like, you know what? I've done all my work. I've built my resume enough. I'll just wait to get my own title shot, and like he's cool with that, and that's real smart. So he's waiting in the wings. You've got Yoel Romero, who's calling for a title shot, who definitely deserves it. Jacare definitely deserves a title shot. You know, Luke Rockhold comes back and gives another dominant performance. He's going to be in title contention. So that's, you know, 4 guys that are all in the mix at all times. So, you know, and I got to build myself up. Then I got to fight, you know, they'll probably get a guy that's top 15 maybe, and then I got to beat probably no less than 2 guys that are top 10, if not top 5, and then hopefully get in the position to fight for the title.
Yeah, and you guys are obviously in the same division as Sam L, because you're talking about trying to fight as much as you can. I don't know if you heard, but he is set to, I think, if I read this correctly, he is set to make the single-year record of most fights in a year. As long as everything goes smoothly, I think he's fighting in Nashville. I think that's what they just announced. So that's the litmus test. That's what you got to reach for. you got to try to get that.
Yeah, no, and I know Sam, and I fought Sam, and you know that's, you know, we're both some good old Wisconsin boys, and we're built pretty tough. And everyone keeps calling, asking me, you know, oh, do you want the rematch with Sam? Blah blah blah, this and that. And I'm like, look, you know, if someone offered me that fight, I'm not gonna lie, I would definitely take it. But I think if it's gonna make sense for everybody. You know, he's trying to get the most fights in a year, like you said. He's been putting in his time. He's trying to build himself up to get tougher and tougher opponents. I think it would make more sense if I fought some guys first, built myself up also, and then you can build up the rubber match, and you can, you know, put a little hype behind it, make a little bit more money for everyone to have it in a city like Chicago or something, or maybe even in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, where you're actually going to get a draw that, you know, financially makes sense.
Could not agree more. That makes a lot of sense. That's very smart. And he, I mean, good for him. I mean, I've had him on twice. And I think, again, I like what you said, that he should keep kind of looking upward, right? Because that's where he's trending. You keep looking up, keep getting those. You don't want to. Now, like, I don't want to refer to you as a step down, because I don't like that terminology. But you catch what I mean, right? Like,
well, and you know, no offense taken, because it is what it is. You know, this will be, you know, it's my second UFC fight. He's got like probably 10 now. Like and he just beat Nate Marquardt. You know, that's.
What's funny is the first time I had him on, and this is all verifiable. I'm not blowing smoke. You can literally go on to my iTunes feed and fact check this very, very easily. The first time I had him on, we were talking about this fight that was coming up. He was fighting Alex Nicholson in Mexico. And then I was basically saying, like, kind of what, like, you know, future fights. We're looking at future fights. And I said, the first name I said was, it'd be really cool if you fought Nate Marquardt. And he goes, that would be really cool, because I want my friends to have money. That was his whole thing, right? He's like, oh, yeah, that'd be awesome. Like, I want my friends to have money. You know, like, if I could fight my friend, then we're both going to make money. Like, how cool is that? So I was like, well, let's make that fight happen. Now, I didn't do anything other than release the episode. I had nothing to do with that fighting book, obviously, although I like to pretend like I did, because why not? Because that was the first place that had ever been mentioned, as far as I'm aware. And then within a month, that fight got set. So I had him come back on before he fought Nate Marquardt, so we could talk about it. Pretty cool. That was that's one of those things. I feel like that's a feather in my cap, even though like it's actually not, because I had nothing to do with it. I think it just turned out that way.
Right.
But man, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. It was an absolute blast.
Oh, no problem. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, for sure. Plug your social media. We've obviously talked tirelessly about your gym, so you don't have to plug your gym if you don't want to. But plug everything, man. Where can we find you?
You can find me on Facebook. Just type in my name, Gerald Meerschaert. I'm on Instagram at @the_GM3. I'm on Twitter at TheRealGM3 and Snapchat at GEEM3.
Now, what is the 3 step? Oh, because you're the third. Duh.
Yeah.
That's what it is. You like how that connection got made as I was saying it?
Yep.
At least I didn't finish it, right?
Yeah, well, and it's way, way easier than saying my actual name, because that's just too much going on.
Yes, full disclosure, before we started this podcast, I was verifying the pronunciation of his name, I think 2 or 3 times. I'm like, hold on, let me make sure I got this right.
Yeah.
All right, Gerald, it was an absolute blast, man. We will talk soon.
All right, man.
And good luck. And please,
hey, thank you.
I will be watching that fight with bated breath.